Take heed that no man deceive you.
Most people still don't realize the fact that all of these things are literally planned out in advance. None of this is a coincidence. Every single bit of this is orchestrated on purpose for their criminal agenda, of course. So, yeah, I'm going to get right into the video. This video says bird flu strain discovery forces Sydney egg farm into bio lockdown. I'm going to put the links to this video and the article that I'm going to share later in the video in the description. So, yeah, without further ado, I'm going to get right into it.
There are fears more cases of bird flu coming in the weeks after the virus was discovered on a farm in Sydney's northwest. Let's go to Jack Hahn now, who's at Freeman's Reach for us. Jack, good morning. An exclusion zone has now been set up where you are.
Yeah, that's right, Brooke. Good morning to you. A biosecurity lockdown in effect this morning. The farm itself is in the foggy distance on your screen, about 2 kilometres down this road. So that exclusion zone is in place this morning. Only essential workers, people that need to be there, allowed in, and they are being disinfected on their way out to try and stop the spread. This bird flu detected here at a farm.
Yeah, you heard what he said. Disinfect and stop the spread.
On Freeman.
These are the same type of words that we were hearing in 2020 being used constantly.
Reach. This is a suburb down from North Richmond, in between North Richmond and Windsor, in fact. But the strain that they found here is separate to the one that's been detected 7 times in Victoria. Nonetheless, more than 50,000 chickens will need to be put down.
It seems what's happening at the moment is we're getting these spillover events occurring from the wild birds that are active at the moment, and that's spilling over into domestic poultry. So we've seen these events in Victoria, 6 or 7 events. There's actually been 2 different viruses in Victoria, and now there's this 3rd virus in New South Wales. So it's actually something we haven't.
And you guys know, let me remind you guys that Australia in 2020, when this massive scam took place, they were going all in with these absolutely ridiculous, tyrannical control measures. It was insane how far they were taking it. And you best believe whenever the next scam takes place, not only is it going to make 2020 look like nothing in comparison, it's going to be so much more harsh, so much more oppressive, so much more tyrannical. And it's not even a question of if, it's a question of when, because we know it's guaranteed to happen. We just don't know the timing of it.
Seen before.
So look, the big question this morning, what does this mean for egg supplies at supermarkets? We know that Coles has limits here in Sydney, New South Wales. In fact, every state with the exception of WA. Woolies and Aldi have not yet moved on putting limits in. Industry experts say that this outbreak isn't likely to knock down stocks just yet. And in fact, they are calling for calm. They don't want to see people flying down to the supermarket and panic buying eggs, Brooke.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John.
And they're talking about people going to supermarkets and panic buying, which we literally saw in 2020.
Egg farmers in quarantine this morning following an outbreak of bird flu.
For more, we're joined by bird flu expert Professor Michael Ward. Professor, thanks for your time this morning. So we're talking about a different
bird flu expert
strain here, aren't we, to the one that's been detected in Victoria?
That's right, yes. From what we understand, it is a different strain. So it's called H7N8. In Victoria, it's been H7N3. So they're different viruses.
How does that happen? I mean, why are they different? And how is it that a different strain has suddenly appeared somewhere else entirely?
Yeah, it's interesting. So avian influenza viruses, there's a large number of viruses, hundreds and hundreds of different types of viruses. So in this case, these viruses really are maintained in wild birds. So that's what their natural home. So they're a wild bird type virus. And it seems what's happening at the moment is we're getting these spillover events occurring from the wild birds that are active at the moment, and that's spilling over into domestic poultry. So we've seen these events in Victoria, 6 or...
Oh, it's a spillover event. This is nonsense, yo. Like, you guys know this is like literal BS propaganda. The only reason I'm showing you guys this video is to show you that more and more and more and more videos and articles are coming out talking about this. And just to show you guys too, like, this is like a very recent video that just came out. They're talking about an egg farm that was forced to be shut down. So, you know, that's very concerning because it sounds like here they're trying to really crack down on the animal products.
7 events. There's actually been 2 different viruses in Victoria, and now there's this 3rd virus in New South Wales. So it's actually something we haven't seen before, this many different viruses hitting this many farms.
And there must be logistical problems with all of that. I mean, how do you prevent it from happening with a wild bird, for example? And how does it not spread to other farms?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's very difficult with wild birds. So the main prevention is biosecurity. So you try and separate your domestic poultry from your wild birds. One issue in the last few years, I guess, is the movement to free range, and that causes many challenges. You can imagine when chickens are outside, contact with wild birds is very difficult to manage. In terms of control,
The way he's talking about free range chickens, which by the way is not even the best quality. The best quality is pasture raised because they're actually outside roaming, in nature and in the sun and whatnot. That's a whole different discussion. I'm not going to get too into detail with that. But it sounds like he'd be in favor of of keeping chickens locked up in cages, which is absurd because it actually makes the chickens a lot less healthier, and their joints are all messed up by being in the same spot, not being able to move and whatnot, and all that nonsense. So so him talking about the spread of this is contributing to the spread and them being outside and all that, and not being locked up in these cages, that's contributing to the problem. That's basically what he's saying. It's just completely absurd. Like, this is just a completely ridiculous fear-mongering narrative that they're propping up on the media right now. But I'm not going to watch this whole video. If you guys want to finish watching it, I'm going to put the link in the description anyways. So, yeah, I'm sick of, hearing this babbling nonsense. The truth of the matter is this is just more fear-mongering garbage that they want people to be scared about. So I'm going to get into the next thing I wanted to share with you guys, and it's this article. And it says, here's why what measures like masking and new ones like safety goggles could return if a bird flu what is declared. Article came out literally, I think today, June 24th. I'd have to double check. I'm not certain if that's today's date. I think it is. I don't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, an ongoing bird flu outbreak among U.S. dairy cows has led to 3 confirmed human cases in dairy workers. And although there aren't any confirmed cases of human-to-human transmission, experts warn safety measures like masks, and safety goggles will be needed if a is declared due to the deadly nature of this boogeyman. And it goes on to say the CDC told Forbes it's monitoring human and animal exposure to bird flu and watching the situation carefully, though the current public health risk is low. Although rare, bird flu typically affects humans who have come in contact with infected birds, and there aren't any confirmed cases of human-to-human transmission. The virus may spread from animals to humans through airborne transmission and through contact with infected surfaces. Dr. Jessica Justman, an infectious disease specialist and epidemiologist at Columbia University, told Forbes, though the exact transmission process isn't fully understood. Former CDC Director Robert Redfield, who helped oversee the agency during the scam of 2020, told News Nation earlier this month a bird flu is inevitable. And it goes on to say, so it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, which is what Robert Redfield, the former CDC director, said. Redfield brought up bird flu's high death rate as a cause for concern if a were to be declared. Of the 889 confirmed human cases between 2003 and May, 52% resulted in death, according to data from the WHO. WHO defines as large-scale outbreaks that can claim millions of lives, disrupt societies, and devastate economies. It won't declare bird flu until the virus causes several outbreaks in at least one country and spreads to another with high death rates in at least one segment of the population. Earlier this year, the CDC began including bird flu in its influenza A wastewater surveillance data in an effort to better monitor the spread. but due to limitations, it's not distinguishable between other influenza A viruses, and testing can't determine the source of the virus. So it could come from a human, animal, or animal byproduct. So much garbage propaganda in here. It's insane. So-called experts have cautioned that if bird flu is declared as the next you-know-what, safety measures will need to be put in place to mitigate the spread. Dr. Dono, however the hell you say his name, a senior epidemiologist at the nonprofit Research Institute, told Forbes methods like masking and social distancing should be the first implemented. We saw that exact same thing in 2020, and look what recently what the fraud Fauci scumbag came out and openly admitted recently. You guys might know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it on here in specifics because I have to be careful with what I say on this platform. But he literally admitted that these exact measures that they were talking about, that they were telling people to comply with in 2020, literally admitted that none of it had any scientific basis behind it whatsoever. Literally admitted it on video. Go look that up if you haven't seen it. He admitted it on video that he basically made it up. And it's funny because when we were saying these things in advance, when we were saying these things early on when the scam took place, we were the ones getting gaslighted by all these dumb people who are just so out of touch with the reality, who enjoy keeping their heads in the sand. We were getting gaslighted for exposing the truth, which is the fact that this whole thing was a massive scam. But anyways, it goes on to say those are all the kinds of interventions we need to put in place to buy time for the you know what, which you know the agenda behind. Said Justman told Forbes new methods like protective eyewear may be effective. This is such a joke, guys. I'm telling you, this is a joke. But you get the idea. Basically, in this article, they're suggesting that we should bring back the ridiculous 2020 measures that were taken with the whole bird flu situation if it ends up being the next scam that they roll with.
You know the whole chicken flu nonsense? Well, let's talk about the 1976 swine flu, which is the same playbook. It was known as the Great Swine Flu Massacre, and it was a national vaccine campaign that was making $135 million for the drug companies. We see the same playbook here. Suddenly, all of a sudden, the CDC came out and talked about how now the people need to get the vaccine. We also see that there has not been a single case of the flu in the United States, but the medical monopoly says we need to vaccinate. They start vaccinating all the pigs, and all of a sudden they all start collapsing and dying, controlling the food supply. Well, if swine breeders won't inject into their animals, our only market is to inject into the people. Then we see Dr. Morris comes out and says we shouldn't do this, and all of a sudden he's fired. Then all of a sudden President Ford comes out and says everybody needs to take the vaccine to save themselves. Within a few months, claims totaling $1.3 billion for victims who suffered from paralysis from the swine flu vaccine. They had to change the name because it was so bad. So if you notice, that was the same exact playbook as what they're probably going to try to pull with the chicken flu, unless you're aware.
Micah 2:1. Woe to those who devise wickedness and plot evil on their beds. When morning comes, they practice evil, because it is in the power of their hands.
And all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death.